Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Option Menu Crew podcast. This is episode 35, and with you today is your usual crew members, myself, Ryan, and Ed is with me today.
Yep, this is Ed, and as always, I'm happy to be here and excited to talk about our topic this week.
That's right, and our topic this week is side quests. And considering how much we play like role-playing games and specific types of action games, we have a lot of experience with side quests. So we feel like we got a lot to talk about today. So to start off with, Ed, what's your side quest policy? And by that, I mean when you're playing a game that has side quests, what do you go through in your mind depending on to determine whether or not you're going to like indulge in a side quest, or do you even like choose to indulge in side quests in games? So what's your stance on that?
I often choose to indulge in side quests, and I'd say usually whether or not I do depends on a few factors, and that's probably well maybe yeah I'd say three factors. One is like the ease of which they can be completed. So if there's a side quest that has like a relatively low barrier to completion, I'll give it a shot.
Mhm.
And as we go in this podcast, I can mention a few examples of where that was the case. The other two things I look for are whether it offers like worthwhile rewards. Because some side quests, they don't get you anything or very little. Um,
Can I ask you a
and
quick question there?
yeah,
Yeah, quick tangent that question. Because I'll answer this as well. But do you like look up the rewards, or do you like when the quest like tells you up front? Because there's not a lot of side quests, and not in my experience, that actually tell you what the reward is up front, or at least explicitly what you could get.
I don't usually look up the rewards in the beginning, but if like I'll try some side quests, and if I'm finding that like, hey, these are worthwhile, then I'll keep doing them. But if I get to a few that I'm seriously like, oh, that was garbage, I might look up the rewards for, you know, other side quests later, just to be like, are there any that I will not do just because the side quests have been really bad from from the beginning. Maybe there's a few side quests that actually are worthwhile and have meaningful rewards, and if most of them seem like they're not, I'd like to know the ones that are.
Hmm. Okay. Any other criteria that go into determining whether or not you are going to do a side quest, or you're gonna like do any of the side quests? And
I'd say the last criterion that I would say is just whether or not they offer any like meaningful characterization or like expansion of the game world. Like if they, even if it's just like a side character and you learn something interesting that helps you understand the story or the world better, I like to do those. um and some games are really good at that, where they have side quests where there's all these unique characters, and sometimes they appear in multiple side quests, and it's fun to do those. And some of them are just so inconsequential. But I usually go into a game and I will try the side quests. Like I'm gonna give them a shot. Like I don't usually, and I never end up doing all of them. Like I'm not a completionist, but I always give them a shot. And sometimes I find ones I'm interested in. One thing I will say, and this is kind of a pet peeve of mine,
Mhm.
is when you talk to someone, and it's kind of a two-parter. If you talk to a quest giver and you don't have a choice of whether or not to like refuse their quest, and it just automatically gets added to your quest log. And then also if you can't
Mm.
like abandon a quest, because it just like eats at me when I have this long list of incomplete quests, and there's like multiple ones there that I just don't want to do, but then I like feel obligated to do them because they're just sitting it there staring me at my quest log. It's just I I I would like to have some more control over that. Like, maybe the option to say, "Oh no, this quest sounds terrible. I don't want to do this. Figure it out yourself." or the option to, once I've already accepted a quest, abandon it and until I decide to accept it again. but most games don't let you do that. But that would be a nice quality of life feature for me.
Yeah. An issue that I typically run into or see for games is that their quest logging is actually very poor. Whether that's that they're not um, descriptive enough, or the information is somehow like not pinned properly, or you can't accept more than one. Actually, that's the thing I see is that's gotten better over time, but by contrast, a lot of people love to just pick up a bunch of side quests, or it seems to be the common preference is that let me pick up all the side quests and just have them in the log, and then I'll tackle them as I go, um, instead of like forcing a limit, like you can only carry one at a time and stuff like that. So, um, going into my halves, I echo a lot of your sentiments. I typically do some side quests. It depends on the game and how I'm feeling about it, because like you said, the character development. I'm definitely, if I'm enjoying the game, if I'm enjoying these characters, I want to see what else happens. I want to see what kind of rewards I get, and I want to see how the world builds out. Not every game does that really well, or well in general. Some side quests are totally just stuff for getting extra resources. Maybe you pick up some weapons, some armor, whatever. And side quests aren't just in RPGs. They're in all sorts of different games, or they're even side objectives. To be a little topical, I was just going to ask, Ed, do you consider like the power-ups in Metroid, not the required ones that actually move you forward, but like the extra missile and health tanks, do you like find those, like, do you consider those side quests?
No, I don't. I mean, would you? You're a big Zelda fan. Would you consider like finding a heart container a side quest?
That's the thing. I guess I kind of would. I mean, I don't think there's much difference between like a side quest and a side objective, especially because like, well, for Zelda, there's tons of the heart pieces to build heart containers. And so Metroid, like, you don't need every missile capacity upgrade. You don't need every heart tank, e-tank upgrade, or energy tank upgrade. Those are extras, but they're still kind of quests, because they're all over the place. They'll take you into different parts of the game. You need certain upgrades to reach different ones and whatnot, and the game will often show them. So I feel like that's kind of worthwhile, because a lot of the times we do side quests for the resources. It's rare that you ever get a quest that's purely just story and doesn't reward you in some way for doing it. Although there is some intrinsic value to doing the rewards when it's just like story wise.
For me, a side quest has to have like a quest giver. So I suppose if there was someone like telling me I have to collect all these energy tanks, I might call it a quest. But if I'm like just
Interesting.
discovering stuff there, I feel like a side quest has to have, or any quest, like there has to be someone who is like, hey, this is your quest. I can't think of something that I would call a quest that isn't involved in other people.
Interesting. Um, yeah, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but that's a distinction, and I don't know if we really need to answer the question of what is or is not a side quest, because I feel like we're splitting hairs between like, oh, this is an extra objective and this is an actual quote unquote quest. But I suppose by like dictionary definitions, there is a difference. Um, but yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, like the wheels are turning, and I'm just seeing like there's so many different side quests. So like Zelda, yeah, there's definitely been quests like, or perfect example, no one tells you to collect the heart pieces. But I remember distinctly, I'm going to pick out just this example because you said a quest giver. Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. There is specifically a NPC that you can meet. Her name is Agatha, I believe. And she asks you to collect bugs out in the world. So you get like a bug catching net, and you collect specimens of bugs. And when you collect enough and bring back, I believe she gives you wallet upgrades. I'm not sure if she gives you other upgrades as well. I forget. It's been so long since I've played the game, and I played it back when it originally came out on Wii. It did come out on GameCube, obviously, a couple weeks later, but I played the Wii version. So that's back when I have it. I didn't play the HD version that came out on Wii U, nor have I played it recently on an emulator or done a replay. So yeah, so she tells you go there, you check back in with her, and you get those, and you'll get your periodic upgrades when you hit the milestones. Also, another super recent example, it's very much a side objective, or yeah, it's just as much a side objective as the bug collecting. In Tales of Arise, once you get the character Kisara, who is the female knight, she's into fishing, and like there are ponds throughout the world map that you can go to and fish, and they have a different assortment of fish, and you collect lures and you get rods to enhance your fishing. So the lures will basically determine which kind of fish you can catch at each spot, and then the rods determine your overall like the stamina gauge on the fishing, because it's like a little quick time event mini game, and if you follow the prompts correctly, you wear down the fish's HP or stamina, whatever you want to call it, and then you land the fish, and the rod determines basically how much room for error you have on the quick time events. So, and then you check in and you get more lures, or you'll get a new rod, and then you'll be able to catch more of the fish, and as you find more of the spots as you explore the world. Now the fish themselves, like, it seems like it's completely self-contained, but it's not completely self-contained, because the fish, you can catch them, you can sell them for money, and a couple of them are food ingredients. So there's actually fish you don't catch that are just, there's water spots throughout the world, and when you go there, you just pick it up like a random resource. And then the other fish that you actually land, those ones are just for money, except for the top tier fish that are like boss fish, and they are considered a special ingredient for cooking, and you can use them. That you can also sell it because it is just a normal inventory entry, but it is something that can be used for two things. So that's where the side quest itself has some value in terms of gameplay mechanics. In terms of intrinsic, I'm not sure. Like, well, there's the Tales series has their own skit system, so it's really nice that you can also just trigger all these events, and you get tons of character building from these random conversations that can happen, and random to relevant, because sometimes they trigger from specific criteria that are vague, and then other ones are like given to you when you like enter a new area or reach a specific spot. They're very much triggered along the way. But for the fishing one, as you like get more and more fish, you will trigger these scenes with Kisara, and when you start landing the boss fish, there's additional scenes there that come up, and also there's like some scenes that are related to it when you're cooking with certain characters as well. So there's in a way, like, Tales has a lot of side questing, because if you consider the reward, the extra character building, there's a lot of extra things you can do that get there, that can get you these extra scenes and interactions with the characters. Now, on the other side of that, because I'm really enjoying my time with Tales of Arise, their side quests are pretty standard fare. Usually you find a quest giver, you talk to someone, they've got an issue, and then it's either like a fetch quest of some sort, or fighting monsters, or they introduce you to like one of the super bosses in the field. The side quests have rarely deviated from anything like that. I haven't like had to do any puzzle solving or mystery solving. There's two quests I did have that ended up being kind of puzzle solving. And so let me ask you there, Ed, what kind of activities do you like side quests to be? Do you know if it like do you enjoy when it's like the RPG style where it's just straight up like getting items or battling, or do you like side quests to be a little more involved? What kind of side quests have you enjoyed?
A few the most recent examples of side quests that I've enjoyed actually really haven't been involved at all. They've been ones that gave me a little bit of a character development, had some good conversation or whatever associated with it, and also got me a pretty good reward. So I'm gonna cite two games there. Both of them were Japanese RPGs. I just finished Neo: The World Ends with You a week or so ago, and the side quests in that mainly consisted of, you had to find person in an area with a little thought bubble over their head, talk to them. Maybe the whole side quest could be completed in the same area that you found the quest giver in, and sometimes you would have to go like retrieve an item from somewhere in that area, or other times they were like possessed by noise, which are the enemies in those games, and you would have to defeat the noise. And really, none of them took more than like 10 minutes. And you would what when you did one of those side quests, you would unlock their character on this social grid, which was part one. It was like it was one of the tools you used to develop your abilities, and you would get like a few what were called friendship points, and you could unlock them on this web, and they might do stuff like give you the ability to use a more powerful pin, or make it so that your combos would build faster between certain characters. So they were important. They were optional, and it would list in the menu every day that had side quests. It would say like someone needs your help in this area, and you would just go to that area and find them. um but they were almost not optional, because I can't imagine not having the benefits of these side quests. I think it would make the game a lot harder to play. But they were fun, and I liked it. They were pretty basic, but still gave me a good benefit and were usually kind of interesting. Another game that had a similar side quest setup that I played last year was uh, Tokyo Mirage Session Sharp FE.
Hmm.
And that one also had, they were called side stories in this, but you would just go up to a character, initiate the side story. You might have to go to a different area or solve a little puzzle. You might have to just figure out where to go to examine something, and it would show you a little bit of a dialogue. And then you get a new benefit that would let you use additional abilities in battle. And these were similarly very essential to the game. So they called them
Hmm.
side stories, but really, like, you should be doing them. And I liked the characterization in them, and I liked they gave you a good benefit. So for me, those were like the ideal examples of side quests. Um, at least, and I guess that's how you would do it in a game that was not open world. Like, open world side quests are a completely different thing, because you're going to be going to the destination, whereas these were all pretty linear games with very small areas.
Hmm.
So like, it's not like you're going to be backtracking all over the whole world, because there isn't much of a world to begin with. So,
Hmm.
but I'm kind of like lately gravitating away from open world games. I'm
Hmm.
kind of have that fatigue going on. So um I've enjoyed where it's not too much work to do the side quests, and I get a good benefit out of them. Um, but like I said, it's hard to even describe as a side quest, because they are optional, but the benefits you get are really kind of essential to how each of those games work.
Okay, and so you mentioned, yeah, you're bringing this up, so I want to ask directly: is what's your feeling on like how required side quests are? Would you actually prefer it if side quests were like mandatory, or is that just something you're kind of putting in yourself personally? Is that you feel like the benefits from them are so good, I don't know why you'd skip them. Where's your head at in that regard?
Um, I don't know if I'd want them to be mandatory. Part of it, I think, is psychological, because you feel like it's optional, but like, oh, look at this extra content I'm getting, and I feel good about doing it. But like, if it were mandatory, maybe I wouldn't feel as good about doing it. um, but like, I'm trying to think of some games where side quests were just very tedious. No, I didn't finish this game, but did you ever play the first Xenoblade Chronicles?
No.
Okay. Well, in the original Wii version, I played a good amount of the Wii version, and I recently played some of the definitive edition for Switch. Um, those side quests were like so incredibly tedious MMO generic filler quests, like go here, kill this many enemies, or collect this many of this item. Um, and in the original game, they were really bad. But in the definitive edition, they updated it so um, you could collect all these quests. uh it would automatic if you had a quest active, it would automatically highlight the enemies on the field that you needed to complete it.
Yeah.
if you collected an item before you got a quest that need it, it will give you this like little premonition that like, hey, I'm gonna need this berry for this quest coming up.
Hmm.
So you would know to keep it. So like it did a good job of making the quests a little more tolerable. And it also had the case where, you know, they uh the quests would automatically complete. You wouldn't have to go back to the quest giver to get your reward.
Yeah.
So I, I'm glad those were optional because I don't think they were fun. Even though they the later version, the definitive edition, did do a good job of making them very easy to complete. But and I think a lot of quests are like that. They're not necessarily that much fun. They're just go here to get this item. Um, and I'm not a fan of those very much rather.
Yeah, I did play Xenoblade Chronicles X, but I'm pretty sure the side quests were pretty much tedious as well because I can't think of anything specifically. However, one of the things where like in terms of criteria for doing side quests, I never really answered for myself with that. So I do like to engage in side quests, but of course there's some that are better than others, and that's the thing where I kind of whether or not I do a side quest, it's based on the game and the feel. So there's an interesting situation where like I do want to talk about like Borderlands for a hot second because Borderlands is unique in that it's very Diablo inspired, and so part of its inspiration with that is that they want you to replay the game a couple times. At first, and that's gotten a little bit better over the four main entries that they've had: Borderlands 1, Borderlands 2, pre-sequel, and Borderlands 3. And Borderlands 1 and 2, and 2 I played the most of. What you do is you do your initial playthrough, which has a soft level cap of around 30. The starting level cap's like 50. So you go through the first playthrough of that. You get up to about level 30 in terms of your gear and your character level. Then you do the second playthrough, which increases the level and starts you out with everything like at around 30. And then you play up to 50, and then all the loot scales up. But you get all the same loot again. Like there's signature legendary guns that come from, no, well, not just legendary guns, but legendary gear from bosses and side quests and everything and go through there. So there, you can get all the side quests in both playthroughs. So in number one, I had no idea how Borderlands worked. So I played through it, and I noticed, and I did. I'm like, oh, you get all the side quests again. And the whole point is, well, you can go through the side quest, you can get the unique gear, and then when you go back through, that's the only way to get the higher level version of the unique gear is also playing through again and doing those quests when you're at the right level, because you receive the gear scaled to you based on that level. But once I learned that in Borderlands 1, and I played a bunch of Borderlands 1 because I went through a whole bunch of times leveling up each of the characters. They all level up individually. Then for Borderlands 2, I decided, okay, well, now that I know that this is how this game works, if it works the same, what I'm going to do is on playthrough 1, I didn't do any of the side quests because I'm like, all of that, I don't want to repeat all that content. I've changed my tolerance for wasting my own time or how I value my time in the game. So I'm like, all right, I know I'm already going to play the second. I know the starting quest is going to be absolutely the same. The gear grind of this kind of RPG is that, you know, you get the higher level stuff, and so you drop the old stuff. So I'm like, all of this gear on this first wave, I'm going to get rid of at some point. None of it's going to hold up. So I didn't do any of the side quests on the first playthrough, and then on the second playthrough, since I'd already know all the story content, I started doing the side quests along the way because then that would be fresh content for myself. Now that's a unique situation because Borderlands is a game designed to be replayed. When it comes to other RPGs, all I can think of is like the really good examples minus the few really poor examples that we had from like Nier Replicant that we were, you know, because we were discussing that a ton. But like Witcher 3, Mass Effect, which I just recently completed my playthrough of the Mass Effect trilogy, and so that has some excellent side quests and some excellent side quest design. Like Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 are both built in such a way that doing the side quests really matters. And in Mass Effect 1, now with like the hindsight especially, that's like the most where the side quests are optional, and what you do there will feed into elements you'll see in 2 and 3. So that's a whole other discussion there that we'll touch on maybe a bit more. So with my criteria, it's also like, depending on how I feel, like I try, if the plot is giving me like a type of a sense of urgency, I will typically avoid doing side quests till I hit what feels like a natural like lull in the story for me to go like, okay, you know what? This makes sense. I can kind of go off and talk to all these people. And that's like what I'm doing in Tales of Arise and stuff like that. And I think I would say I prefer side quests to be optional. I think side quests are designed by nature to be optional. But I wondered, because we were talking about like with games that are more open, like typical Japanese RPGs where they've got some openness, or like Western RPGs that are really open, or even open world games like now, like there's probably, I'm not familiar with Grand Theft Auto, but you and I have both played Red Dead Redemption 2, and there's a lot of side quests in that game. And I'd say a lot of the side quests are worthwhile because you'll meet interesting characters, you'll have interesting character moments, and you can get some decent upgrades or some extra money or stuff like that. But by no means would I want it to feel like, well, if you do this side quest, the piece of gear or item or thing you get or is so good or critical that you couldn't complete the main game without it. I think if anything, it's like if you do a side objective, it either just teaches you more about the world, or it can give you something that'll make the game either way better or way more interesting. And currently, like, I can't remember everything with Red Dead. But I did want to lead into something when I was talking about Red Dead, is the idea of like secret side quests. There's things that you sometimes like aren't obvious. Do you prefer, do you have a preference on, do you want all the side quests to be highlighted? Do you want like all the characters and anything that you could do? Like, you want a hint to know where they are? Or do you like kind of organically discovering, or where's your mix there?
You mean like in Red Dead, how all the stranger quests were not like, they weren't just icons on your map. You kind of had to stumble across them.
There's like that one, that style there, and I don't remember if this one was marked or not, but there was also, I still remember
they didn't mark them until you kind of were in their vicinity.
Yeah, and then it was just like a radius.
Too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if this one was actually marked, if it was like totally secret. Was the I remember the short story towards the end of the game, The Widow in the Woods. And I think you actually checked in with her like 2 or 3 times. Do you remember that?
Maybe. Sounds familiar. I don't.
It sounds like a horror story.
It's been a while. It's been like 3 years since I played that game. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that it's been like a while for me too. I played on the PC really, so more recent than you in that regard. But like, it was still, actually, it might be about the same time at this point. And specifically, I think you find an abandoned cabin in the woods, and then I don't think it's marked at all. Like, you just find what seems like an abandoned yet lived-in cabin in the woods. You walk in, Arthur has faints, and then you're woken up, and this woman's talking to you, and you find out like she used to live there with her husband, but her husband died, but she wants to keep up because they moved out to the wilderness to just kind of live their lives. So she's kind of keeping their dream alive. And then with Arthur, like, you can do some hunting with her, you can check with her. I think you teach her how to be like a better marksman, or something like that. You go on a few hunting trips. You kind of just keep her company, and I think you can check in on her like 2 or 3 times.
I don't think I did that one.
Okay. So yeah, I have to double check, and listeners can obviously let us know if it's if that one was marked or unmarked. But I felt like some of that's really cool. I do think there's a specific thrill to if you're exploring and suddenly you stumble upon a brand new quest. Whereas also, I guess I also kind of hate, and it does kind of peeve me off when I don't know, because I am a person who likes to do side quests, where not knowing that there's something there. So I think that was kind of like a good middle ground. It's like, hey, we're going to give you some objective. We're going to let you know something's around here, something you might want to see, but we're not going to tell you exactly where. You can discover it, and when you do, you'll know. So you definitely, when you know. I like that thing, but I suppose that when it's like a big map like that, I do like the idea that you can find it. Um, yeah, is there any interesting side quests you remember where it's like you kind of stumbled upon it?
Hmm. Let me think. Let me look at the my list of games.
Well, while you're looking, I did have another example. So this is actually a secret side quest, and I found this because I started looking up because I wanted to clear out everything. Zelda Breath of the Wild. There, a lot of the side quests you can easily find, but there's a couple where it takes a little extra effort to get them. And I'm not talking just like shrines and stuff. There's actually like a side quest in the optional village. So there's one side quest where you help build up an additional town, and that one's pretty straightforward. You go there, or actually no, it is a little interesting. It's not completely straightforward. And when I said straightforward, I was thinking about the fact is you need to donate money, and then as you donate money over time, the town gets bigger and bigger. But to start off with, you meet these eccentric carpenters, and they're looking for people with specific names. Their letter starts with a specific initial, and I forget what it is, what the actual initial is, because it's all the same. But, or some like suffix or something like that to their name. But either way, you find these people, and then you report them back, and they like go, and that's how you recruit people to help build up the town, whether they're shopkeepers or like groundskeepers or something like that. Whatever the job is, and then you're donating money on the side. Once that town's built up, there's people that live there, and then there's a hidden side quest. How it's hidden is that there's no markers for it. The only way you can discover it is the way you discover it is you go behind a house at a specific time of day, a specific time of night, and you stand outside the window and you can eavesdrop. And I think you have to eavesdrop like 3 times, and then it triggers the quest. So there's no, as far as I know, there's no hints or clues to find it. That's something where you just kind of stumble upon it. I think the only possible hint that something's going on is that if you happen to go there at the right time in the right spot, like it automatically shoots out like a text bubble when you're passing the area. But other than that, I didn't recall if there was any sort of trigger or hints to get you to do that. So it's very secret side quest. And I was both impressed that I'm like, holy crap, this is like a secret that you can just find or stumble upon and that people would miss. I'll be like, have you done this? And it's one of those nice little hearsay things, water cooler talk. Whereas at the same time, I'm like, I would also be kind of upset if I didn't know, because the quest itself was also kind of interesting, and not having in-game hints to be able to find quests can be I would have preferred some like more subtle thing like that, where you can get like a clue to be able to go, hey, there could be some content here, and then you got to solve it out. So I like that being a puzzle aspect. I don't think I like anything being completely hidden. I don't know if you've come up with a.
Yeah, I think I typically prefer a quest to be marked, but I don't mind if they're hidden because I can always look it up if I want to know or I stumble across it. Um, but when I'm playing a game, I kind of like them to be marked. I can't really think of a hidden quest I stumbled across that I wasn't really looking for. But I did have a thought earlier. You mentioned how sometimes the story has more urgency than than the amount of side quests you're doing
Yeah.
would suggest. And in Neo the World Ends With You that I just finished, it was funny near the end of the game when things were heating up. One of the characters, as you were doing side quests, was like, man, you sure like helping people, like was, commenting on the fact that, hey, we got a quest. Why are you just going around helping random people? So I thought that was kind of funny that they were acknowledging that there is so much urgency. Why are we wasting time on these trivial problems? But um that never usually bothered me, to be honest. I know people sometimes cite that as a immersion breaker, but I'm pretty good suspending my disbelief in those situations. But back to the idea of hidden versus uh, you know, marked side quests. I like them to be marked. You know,
Mhm.
even like the Metroid games where you asked me whether the power ups were a side quest. I like the ones that have a map that kind of makes it more obvious where at least what parts of the map have a power up
Mhm.
and whether or not you've collected them. Like Zero Mission and Fusion, they will I think what they do is they have like a dot on the map in a room where there might be an item and it changes to a circle when you've collected it.
Mm.
Or it might be the other way around. I can't
Mhm.
remember. But not every area on the map is marked, so you still have to uncover hidden areas, but it gives you a good idea of where you may have missed a hidden item. And Super Metroid does that. It has dots, but they don't change to circles when you collect items. So you can't like look at the map and be like, "Hey, did I collect that item in this area?" And it also does some really like devious stuff where there might be a dot in a square on the map, but that map area actually has two hidden items. So you might collect something that's like obvious and don't realize that you have to bomb another brick to expose another missile tank. So there's a few rooms that have two missile tanks that are really like, triggers as to
Yeah.
whether or not you've collected the items. Um, so
Yeah.
I like that in Metro games, or even in games where like it tells you what percentage of collectibles you have in an area.
Mhm.
Like I think Paper Mario Origami King did that. You and I both played that,
Yep.
where it would tell you how many of the toads you found in an area.
Yep.
So if you were really going for like 100%, you have a better idea of where you're missing something. So
Yeah.
collectibles, it's nice to at least have a number to go for so you know when you're finished and how close you are.
Yeah, I think that would be if we're talking like about ideal systems here. I think like Red Dead had a pretty good um system there. I think in your menus there should be a total list of all the side quests. And then they start out just like all question marks, like by lines, and you're just like if it's like an area based game like towns, villages, sections, whatever you want to call it, however it's broken up. It'd be nice if there was a glossary list so you could just be like, okay, there's this many quests in this world, there's this many quests in this section. And so it doesn't necessarily tell you where they how to acquire them or where they are, but it lets you know that in this area there are this number of quests to solve. And then it would be nice if there was some in-game way, whether that's like a fortune teller type character or some sort of like research you can do, that whenever you find a hint that would lead you to a side quest, that it would go there and be like, hey, when you highlight that line item in your quest glossary, it'd be like, hey, you got clue number one that possibly going to this alley there might be something interesting, and then maybe you can find like a couple. That way you can kind of puzzle it out. And then there's some obvious quests where like you've met the person, they're gonna have quests for you. They have something, and the game just has it in the menu, so you can always reference it. Um, that way it's not too hidden, but uh, it's not super obvious. So you feel like there's a little bit of game to be played there. Um, and so yeah,
It's nice.
Mhm.
It's nice when the game has like in-game resources for finding those things.
Yeah.
Like I keep talking about Neo: The World Ends with You, but you could unlock like social links that would let you reveal how to evolve certain pins, or it would let you reveal where certain other collectibles were. So every you could conceivably 100% that game, and it would eventually you were able to unlock all the information you needed to within the game. And Paper Mario was like that too, where like the toads, you would get tools that would help you locate the toads. Like it's nice when the progression in the game enables you to actually complete it, if at least if that's your desire to. Like I don't know how you could possibly find all the Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild I guess if you wanted all 900 of them.
Yeah. And you're not really meant to, because the item you get is more like an achievement unlock than it is like an actual than it is like a reward or something, because you've seen what the reward is, right?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, so it's a golden, I forget what they call it in game, but it looks like a golden poo. It's basically or a giant Korok seed, I think they call it. And but it looks like a giant golden poo, which is basically like, hey, this is to mark that you did the thing.
Yeah.
Which is really funny for that. Like that there for the Korok seeds, because eventually the Korok seeds, for those who don't know, are used to pay for additional inventory slots, but you reach your maximum inventory slots well before you reach the maximum amount of Korok seeds, because like Ed said, there's 900, and that they put that many in the game so that way there's tons to find, so it's easy to get to where you want to go without having to need to get all of them, which I appreciate as well. That could drive people nuts because they might think like, how do I know that I shouldn't collect all 900? And like that I can also feel for. Which, when you were talking about that, I actually had an interesting side thought. Would you prefer if quests were actually like categorized based on what their actual like gameplay was? Like, is this an item fetch quest? Is this a combat fetch quest? Is this a or like a story fetch? Would you appreciate if they actually categorized them out so you knew what kind of gameplay you were getting into, and that way you could choose like, I don't want to do any of the fighting quests. I don't want to do any of the item grabbing quests, or I only want to do those unique quests. What do you think of that? What the idea?
I don't think it's a bad idea. It's never bad to give you more information about a quest before you do it. Like, I think we talked about earlier, whether or not it tells you your reward before you accept the quest.
Mhm.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Another really useful feature that some games do is they give you a recommended level for a quest.
Yeah.
So you have an idea of whether or not you are ready to attempt it.
I think a quest should always tell you whether or not you can or can't complete it at this time.
Oh, like parts of it are story gated.
Yeah, like you haven't reached the area to complete it yet or something like that. As long as there's something obvious that tells you, it should be noted, like, hey, revisit this. That way you're not like, because people could bang their head against the wall trying to figure out, like, what am I doing wrong? It's like, literally, you're not far enough along. We gave it to you early so that way you have something to come back to. Like, I could imagine, like, for Tales, I can use a perfect example is that there's, and it's a combat quest where they drop, like, a super enemy into the map, and you're supposed to eventually fight it, but you start out, like, you get at the beginning of the game when you're, like, level 10, and the enemy's level 42. You're not meant to come back and fight that thing for a long time, but they give you access to it right away so you can kind of smash your head against it and realize, oh, it's too strong. Like, even though it's like an action game and it feels like you should be able to maybe brute force it, if you were really good, yeah, you could probably brute force it, but you're doing like 1 damage to this thing, and it has a health bar, so it has a health bar and it shows you how much HP it has, so you know you're not supposed to be fighting that thing.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, you talk about like if you're in the right area. Yeah, that's another thing that would be nice. I think I mentioned this a little earlier, that it's nice when you don't have to like run all over the world to complete a quest, or at least if there's fast travel to make that easier.
A good fast travel system makes all the difference.
But you really want, I think we haven't mentioned it yet, but you really want to talk about nonsense quests. Is we both played this earlier this year, is Near Replicant.
Yeah, hang on, I'll look up I think it's a version 1.2, right? Is how they do it. So
yeah, it's like it's the square root of 1.5, whatever that is. That's where the number comes
I
from.
at least want to get those for, yeah, it's considered Near Replicant version 1.2 and then a bunch of numbers. So it is but the remaster of the original Nier.
The version upgrade.
The version upgrade. Yeah, it's still a remaster, whatever. But yeah, we were talking about it. So we did all the quests because we both knew going into it what it was required to get all the endings, but we also heard that some of the quests are great and some of the quests are not. And then we discovered that we wanted to do a dedicated Nier episode because of that, but we're trying to get a special guest for that one as well, who's also a huge Nier fan. So let's talk about Nier for a second there. What quest did you want to talk about first? What's the side quest that sticks out in your mind?
Oh man, just some of the I did some of the quests early on just to help me make some money because you need to buy all the weapons to get all the endings.
Right.
Um and but some of the quests in the second half to get the required weapons, they had like 5, 6, 7 different parts, which were just so tedious. And I'm trying to remember parts that were really bad, but one of the weapon quests was it just had you running all out. Like I must have blocked it out. They were so terrible, but I just I just remember just dreading having to complete these, and really I just powered through it because I wanted to get all the endings.
Yeah.
The one that sticks out is the one where you're like there's a father trying to find his son,
Yes.
and I didn't complete this one. I ended up
Oh.
I
Then let me
ended up
talk about it.
looking. Okay, I ended up looking up the ending, and I was like, no way, I'm not doing this. But maybe you can speak to whether or not it was worth it for you.
So I would say it was worth it to me because this is one of those few missions where I thought what happened was very interesting. It seemed very boring at first, and just the way it ended, I'm like, totally made it for me. And it's unique because you actually don't get a reward. So as you said, it starts out with you talk to a dad, and he's looking for his son who's run away. Tells you he wears a funny hat, he dresses funny. That's how you know. So it's a very unique looking NPC. Gives you, I think you do have to talk to like a few townspeople to get an idea of where he goes. I don't know if, and that's the other thing. I don't know, and I think side quests, when they're like puzzle solving of some sort, they shouldn't require you to do all the steps to complete it. If you want to just like say you didn't talk to any of the other villagers or get the clues, you could just go and his NPC is going to be there and you can talk to him and be like, well, that's a different looking NPC. I wonder if that's related. And it triggers the next step. I think you should be able to do some sequence breaking in that regard, because I think like clues and hints should be there for like helping you get to where you need to go, but you shouldn't be required to like flag those in order to get NPC. I hate that when it's a quest is like, when it doesn't, and it depends on if it makes sense or not, but regardless, it's a little sidetrack. So anyway, you get hints and clues, you go, you talk to the guy, and you find him. He's like, yeah, well, no, my dad wants me to take over the family business, but I'm like a free spirit, man. And you're like, okay, whatever, dude. And he's like, all right. You know what? I'll go back, but this one dude's been taking care of me, and I really want to pay him back, and you help me get him a gift. You go, okay. So you go back, you go do your fetch quest, you come back to talk to the guy, and he's gone. But the quest marker's over someone else. It's like, oh yeah, or you go to talk to you notice the guy's gone, so you go back to talk to the guy that he said he was taking care of, that the son was saying was taking care of him. Talk to him like, oh yeah, that dude, he just kind of ran off. I don't know. And I think, where do you think he was going? Well, I think I heard he was talking about this. You go check the next spot. You find him again and do like, what happened here? And it's like, same thing. The dude's like, oh, well, and I'm like, I just really don't want to go back, and I'm sorry, but you know what? For real this time. And tells you something. You go, you do the thing, you come back, he's gone again. You repeat one more step. You talk to the guy, and he's like, all right, fine, you got me. And you call his bluff, and the guy says he's going to go back to his dad. So you go back. I think you escort him then, I think is that last step. So you escort him back to his dad. And then it's like, okay, well, thanks for bringing back my son. And like, get exactly how the conversation goes. But like, you leave, you don't get a reward. You come back, and you want to check on the NPC. And instead of the father and the son, it's a guardsman at their place. And considering this is near, you expect, oh, something really sad just happened, like whatever. Talk to the guard, and he's like, oh yeah, no, we've been investigating these guys. The one dude runs he's a crime lord, and he was trying to getting ready for, from what we heard, he was grooming his son to get ready to take over the business. And yeah, they just skipped out because they were back on taxes or something like that. And you're like, huh. And I think there's even dialogue that says like, oh well, sometimes, I guess the lesson is sometimes things don't work out. And it's like, you just realize you inadvertently helped a mafia boss get his son back, or crime lord, whatever you want to call him, and the son was trying to escape the life of crime, and you just don't get any reward. It's just a world building thing. You just like experienced a side story, and I was like not expecting the ending, and it's so like it's such a near kind of side quest that I was just like, I love it. I'm glad I did that. That was fun. That was super fulfilling to like, and I didn't know that was how the quest was going to end. I just was doing a side quest, but like every step of the way, I like the idea that the dude was lying to me and ditching out. And I, after like the first time, I'm like, all right, this is probably going to happen again or whatever. So that wasn't too surprising, but it was always funny what was going to happen or what was going to be said, and being able to call the guy, or your character calling out the son on that, and then that resolution. I thought that was very satisfying. It's very different. It just leads you down a path that you didn't know it was going. I like that kind of stuff. So that was refreshing, even if I didn't get a reward, because the quest itself literally felt like its own reward. How does that sound?
Yeah, I don't think I would have felt that way.
Speaking,
I mean,
yeah.
I remember one quest you were doing, Vice, your floating book companion,
Yeah.
remarks about how he wishes there were more quests that could be completed in the vicinity of the quest giver.
Yeah.
And I definitely agree with that comment. I'm not a fan of just running all over,
Yeah.
the country to complete my quests.
Well, but Near Replicant in general, that has a very small world with a very poor fast traveling system, and that is, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's nice to have the in-game humor so you can kind of laugh with it, but the fact that you still have to do it, and there's, you don't have to do every side quest. There's a bunch later on that are just money wise. You don't have to complete them. They're not even really that interesting, and you can just skip them. Someone out there could write like an optimal guide of like, do these ones because these are the ones that'll get you weapons. These are the ones with the unique enough stories, and that's really all there is to it. We'll save discussing that for another time. But yeah, there was that. There's also some other interesting like side quests. And I feel like I could talk about them for days. But I like them when they have little mini games, or I like them when they require some puzzles. Like I picked up one quest in Tales where the guy's like, hey, I don't think he's even telling me what the reward is gonna be. It was just a matter of, he's like, I'm gonna give you 3 clues, figure them out, and when you figure out the thing or find what I'm looking for, you can bring it back to me, or you tell me what you found, and then I'll give you your reward. So I haven't really delved into that yet. I just kind of took it, and because I figured, you know what, I don't even know if I'm in all the right areas for this, so I'm gonna leave it alone for now. And I haven't found any clues for that. But something that was a smaller version of that was, there's a recurring NPC that gives you new special recipes for cooking. And I know that's sounding also Final Fantasy 15-ish, but like Tales has also been doing cooking for forever. So it's, JRPGs are very similar. Fishing mini games, cooking mini games, crafting, whatever. This NPC, like normally he would just tell you, please find these ingredients, and then I'm going to cook up this dish, and then we'll try this out. And then if you have the ingredients, you just give it to him, and you can write in the quest, and you can just finish the dialogue and get the recipe. But for this one, he said, I found this recipe, but the paper is kind of like damaged, or it's written in like a weird way. It just describes the ingredients, and he's like, so I'm not going to tell you what the ingredients are, but here's the clues to figure out those ingredients. And like 2 of them I already had, and I couldn't figure out what the last one was. And then I realized it was something I didn't have yet, because I was like, what could this be? And I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, because the only way to do it was to partake in another side quest to get this exclusive resource. So once I got that ingredient, then I was able to complete so I had to look that up because I was not sure what I was looking for. Which is tough, but I guess like that's part of it. And the recipe is not absolutely necessary. It's a good recipe, but it's not absolutely necessary. We're talking about like side mini games and stuff. The bug catching mini game is the bug catching thing is kind of a mini game, but what was it like? What specifically popped in my head when I was thinking about that is in the game Astral Chain for Nintendo Switch. made by Platinum Games, is there's a side quest where you're giving someone an ice cream cone. And what you do is you go to an ice cream stand and you can order different numbers of scoops. I think if you order it for yourself, you get like a temporary stat buff. But for this quest, there's you get an ice cream cone and you can get, I think, like 1, 5, or 10 scoops. And it's a physics object. What happens is when you get the 10 the perfect thing you can do is get the 10 scoop, but then because it's like the comical like stacked straight up ice cream cone, it's like hot, it's super tall, and you have to do a balancing game to get it over to the NPC with losing as few scoops as possible to get the best reward. Now, I looked into what the rewards were because it's really hard to do. But I love it when the games mix up the mechanics or even like the puzzle solving, like just not straight up combat or stuff like that. I don't mind if there is combat. I don't mind if part of the objective is finding an item. But it does get a little boring if all the quests are just find this for me and bring it back. Go here, fight these monsters here. I don't mind if that stuff's involved, like, hey, in your part of your along the way you have to fight some monsters, or monsters will be in your way. Ed's cat is in the background just absolutely like exploring the house like a mad
He's causing trouble.
yeah, he's looking.
Every time I look, he's up on top of something or knocking something down.
Yeah, for our listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the listeners, I've been watching the cat jump around, but it's been fine. I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation. But yeah, that loud bang was the cat is up at its game. So,
but you were talking about mini games though.
Yeah, mini games in the side quests.
I'm not usually a fan of mini games because I feel like in most RPGs, they are just full of mechanics that are just infuriating, and it's like
they can be. That's true.
Maybe this is not a good example because like Final Fantasy X is just like full of bad mini games, but
yeah.
Like the lightning dodging for Lulu's ultimate weapon or the chocobo racing or blitzball. Yeah. I never did any of those. I couldn't be bothered. I for that kind of stuff, I don't think I ever even like the thought crossed my mind that maybe like, hey, maybe I might do this. It's just like, no way. And I actually want to try the most recent Yakuza game, Like a Dragon, but I know those are just like full of mini games. And some of them are like somewhat required for progression. So we'll see how much I actually enjoy that. But I want to try it.
Yeah.
But I've never really been too big of a fan of mini games. Trying to think, what have I played where I liked the mini games? Didn't just like.
While you're thinking of that, I did want to bring up the Yakuza game and the spin-off, the Judgment and Lost Judgment, because while I haven't had a chance to play those yet, and I think I want to play Judgment and Lost Judgment just because they're like a clean departure from the Yakuza games. And yes, I know for our listeners who are Yakuza fans, I completely respect the series. I'm just not sure if I really want to commit to that because it is a lot of games, and I know it's a lot of there can be some jank. I am impressed by what I've seen from the games and what they do with their side quest designs. But just for a more recent example, a streamer I watch is playing Lost Judgment, and they were describing on a podcast like just how involved the side quests can be. And they're like, these side quests are practically their own mini games and their own like side stories, like complete expansions of that. So I wanted to come, and that's great because when I'm enjoying a game, I'm always looking for more content, and I just want new experiences within that universe and that world. But Ed, do you have a preference, or what are your thoughts on like how big do you like side quests to be? You enjoy it when you find out like, oh my god, this side quest is like a huge multi-step like own side adventure, or do you prefer it to be these kind of like little bullet point things where you just get they're like spice to the overall meal that is the main game? How divergent do you like the side quests to be?
I think I usually like it to be more on the spice side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like the quests a lot in Red Dead Redemption 2. I ended up doing a lot of those side quests, and some of them had you riding a good distance and doing other mini games and challenges. So like I thought those were fun. But
Yeah.
I especially in the recent years, I haven't played many games where um they were, well, I don't look like I don't know about you, but I like to keep a list of the games that I finish, and
I have to start doing
looking
that.
at the I'm looking at that now.
You were telling me like,
Oh, Death Stranding. I know you and I both played that, and
oh,
like
there we go.
side quests in that were just carry more cargo. And that didn't really grab me as that much.
There's only one side
But
quest I want to talk about in that one. Maybe you
which
can
one is
guess it.
that? Is it the pizza one?
No, it's not the pizza one, although that payoff is worthwhile. No, I was going to talk about the one where, and this is a side, I'm pretty sure this is actually a side quest, is the one where you bring the girlfriend to the boyfriend.
Oh, like on your back?
Yeah, because she's like actually like an actress or
No,
something.
I think that's required. I think that's required.
Really? I was pretty sure that was a side quest that you
And
just
and
like...
and isn't like the yeah, I guess we're going a little bit in the spoilers here, so I'll just have to warn.
We're not
It
spoiling
isn't,
anything about that plot.
but isn't like well, it's a minor detail, but isn't like I think there's later parts to that quest where as you continue to help them, they end up like hating each other.
Right, yeah. It does
But
go down an interesting like near level route.
yeah, but I think like early on, like the first quest where you have to bring her across on her back and cross the BT area, that is required because I did that.
Oh,
And
really? Okay.
I probably wouldn't. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's required. But I think there's like later elements to that
You know what?
couple
I gotta
where they
double
end up,
check.
yeah, where they end up hating each other, and like the guy is always complaining about the woman as you in his little hologram as you talk to him.
Yeah, because he ends up like wanting to marry her, and that's the thing.
Yeah, but then I think he regrets it.
Um,
I
it says
but
it's a fetch quest.
they're all fetch quests.
Right, they're all fetch quests, but it calling it a fetch quest, it seems like
Oh, I
um,
thought it was required.
junk dealer. You do have to talk to the junk dealer, I think, for something. But I don't. I'm not sure. That felt like a side quest though, because I felt like it was beside the story, and it's just like, hey, it would be really helpful if we had this junk dealer on board. And then it's like, okay, well, you know what? Fine. It sounded important, so I'll go do it. And then it's like,
No, I think the junk dealer wasn't an optional one.
all right, so my bad then, because I interpreted that wrong.
My one friend, he loves Death Stranding, and I was watching him play. I was over at his house the other weekend, and he was playing the director's cut.
Yeah.
And he's just going back and forth, and he was in the second area and the third chapter, and he wanted to max out these these connections so badly that he would steal a mule car, and this was before he could even like make his own trucks. So he'd steal a mule truck, load it up with items, drive it back and forth until the timefall destroyed it, then steal another mule car. And it is fascinating to me how addicted he got to that gameplay loop, because I did not feel the same desire as him to max out all these connections and keep delivering cargo and building up the roads, but he loved it. So I'm glad he found something he liked as much as he did. But I was more of the complete the main story, maybe build a few roads and zip lines to help me out with that, but I wasn't like I didn't get as into it as some people did.
Zip lines are the best thing. Once I had those, I'm like, oh my god, this game is so much more tolerable at this point. And you don't get them till way late in the game. It's very unfortunate. If I could have, but
you get them in like the 5th chapter.
That's
not that.
But
that's
five,
not that late.
5 and pass. And once you're past the 5th chapter, though, that like the game is going to the end. Like it fast tracks to the end there because you get like 3 chapters back to back in terms of the way the game calls them chapters because they label them in game.
Yeah.
So like that, getting to chapter 5 because like chapter 2 or chapter 3 is huge. It's forever. And then like one of the chapters is literally like a 30-minute boss fight.
Yeah.
So when we say that, like you say chapter 5, but that's
chapter 3 is like 15 hours of gameplay. Yeah, you're right.
That's
10 or 15 hours of gameplay.
The chapters are not of equal length or quite representative of where you are in the game in terms of how much time it takes. So yeah, I gotta correct you a little bit on that one. But so what I wanted to get into, shoot. Train of thought. Come on back to the station. What I was gonna talk about, well, I was going to bring up like Super Mario RPGs where I got my love for the mini games and stuff like that. And I want to do a quick shout out. It's not a side quest necessarily, but in Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Crystal Bearers for the Wii, they do a lot of like mini games in not only the store for the story as well. And I just like it when RPGs shake up gameplay because I want the combat to be good, but I like there to be different types because if you're just doing combat, even if the combat's really good, like it can still feel a bit tedious. So I like there to be some side activities. I like it to feel like an adventure, and I think that when you have the mini games, it feels like it. And I realize that's demanding, but I'm not talking about like huge that I need like tons of huge things, and I'm fine if they recycle it. Like Final Fantasy VII, also a great example. Although also a huge mini game, or I shouldn't say a huge game. It is Final Fantasy VII, the original, is a huge game in general for even by its standards. Although people also go off about the card game for Final Fantasy VIII, the
Triple
Triad, yes. So like even one mini game can go throughout, or like Witcher 3 had Gwent, and people love that, and I indulged in it very not too much, but just enough, much to my own comfort. Now I remember. So like with the whole like topic, the whole point we were discussing about like how the game should map out and give us some stuff about the information, give us just enough information. I wanted to gush a little bit about Metroid Dread since I've been playing that. So this is not a spoiler at all. I'm just going to talk about the map and how the map works, and you're going to like this. So I think Metroid Dread's map is actually really well done because you also brought up how the other Metroids were working. So in this one, just like before, there's it fills in as you walk around, and then you can find rooms that'll give you map data, and it'll block out like parts of the zone, but not as specifically as it used to be before, because it'll actually show like some geometry now inside the map since it's a more modern game, but it's not like the old one where it's just the blocks. It'll actually do it'll actually show some geometry inside the map, but then it just blocks out the zone, so oh, this map's going to stretch around this way. So as we all know, or should know about Metroid, is that you'll find doors and gates, and there's ways, and you need specific tools to open up different paths. If you encounter a door or a gate that you're not sure how to do, they already have their unique icons, and they pop in on the map. And when you move the cursor over the icon on the map, if you don't know what it is, it shows question marks. If there's an item you see on there, and even if it appears on screen, it'll put it on the map, and you can highlight it, and it'll tell you like missile tank, energy tank, or whatever the other types of upgrades there might be for it. And you can, and it'll say acquired or not acquired. So the icon will either go is solid, or then it goes opaque once you collect it. But then also it says in words on it when you highlight it, this was acquired. Also, there's some interactive devices that you have to work with. So when you see a point of interest, it will pop it on the map. You'll highlight it. If it doesn't know what it is or whatnot, it will pop it in the name, or it'll say question mark, and it'll also say in parentheses interacted or used, or what I forget what the exact word is, but if you do use it, it says used or interacted, and that way yes, you've been there. You don't have to go back and check if you've actually touched the thing. So far I've really enjoyed using the map, and I think it's been giving me just the amount of items. They do have a percentage, and there's a couple different sections, so each one has their own percentage. I don't know if there is.
They started that with Samus Returns, where it would tell you percentage for each area, and okay. I liked that as well.
I don't know if
there's useful.
I don't know if there's an overall percentage. I haven't looked too deeply in the menu,
But yeah, I did read
Yeah.
that about Metroid Dread, and for our listeners, I was gonna get it yesterday, but I happened to see on Twitter that the special edition a few came in stock, so I ordered that. So I'm awaiting my special edition. So it's a little frustrating being patient, and I suppose I could just go and buy the digital copy and play that until I get the special edition. But I'm not that impatient, but I am excited to play it. But I did read that about the map, that it's good about highlighting things, and that's nice because in Samus Returns they would give you like 10 or 20 or so markers that you could use on the map in each section. And what I would end up doing is when I came across a door of a certain type, I would give it a colored marker. So I was already kind of doing that manually to help me remember where I could go back and potentially open up a new area and likely find an upgrade. So it's nice to know in Dread that I won't have to do that.
And
I
then when
can
you
save the map markers for something more important.
Yeah, and then when you get the item in question that opens up gates, all of the icons on those maps that related to that will now say what they were for. So you can go back and, oh, that was that, this is that. So all the ones you ran into, you're like, oh, I know that. Also, I'm going to take a moment here, Ed, and blow you up because that's not the full story for Metroid Dread. Because as listeners of the podcast will know, you're a huge Metroid fan. So when the Metroid Dread was announced and then the special edition was revealed, you and I were talking, and I was like, oh man, you're going to get the special edition, right? And you went, no, I'm not going to get the special edition. And I'm like, why are you not getting the special edition for a game you've been going for a series that is like one of your top 2 favorite series? And you're like, I don't like the physical stuff in it. I'm like, how are you not just buying it for the sake of like, it is the game you've been waiting for? You're like, I don't want it. I don't need it. I don't want to waste the money on it. And I'm like, you're blowing my mind, man. But okay, that's how it is. Fast forward to the other day, and you had your physical copy in hand, bought from GameStop. Also, I'm going to call you out on this because I like, now, once again, if real life you don't have the time, I get it. Like, obviously, this is also, you also have grounds for blowing me up in the future if you need to, if I ever double back on something, or you need to I double back on something. Is that you told me I'm at GameStop. There's like 10 people in line. I'm not dealing with this. And also, oh yeah, that's right. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Also, it's like they announced the amiibo. I'm like, dude, you're totally getting the amiibo, right? And you're like, I forget exactly what you told me, but it was either a combination of.
I said I already have some Metroid amiibo because I already have a few of the Metroid amiibo.
I forget if you said they're expensive. I hate that they're sold out. I don't want to have to pre-order them, or
I think I said I might maybe I said I don't like Emmy or something.
Something like that.
I don't know.
You're like, I don't.
You also, point is, I made up a bunch of excuses, and now that I have the okay.
Let me finish. Let me finish. Yes, that's good, but hang on. Let me finish. You also said you hated the DLC features they were given. We had a discussion, which I'm like, I get it if you're not. But I thought personally that they weren't big because it's like it's one extra energy tank, it's one extra set of missiles, or it's a missile refill, or once a day for things. And I'm like, that's not too big. That's just a bonus. So I don't feel that's egregious. That is just a nice little perk for having them. But you were like, no, I don't even like that on principle. Like, none of that stuff. I'm just buying my copy of the game and I'm fine. And I like physical, so I'm getting physical. I'm like, all right, dude. Once again, resuming our fast forward back to that point of we're texting about it. I'm like, hey man, I downloaded it. I even sent you a picture because I ended up staying up. So I stayed up. I downloaded it. I'm like, is it available at midnight? And it was. I was very happy. So I played it for like 30 minutes. It was great. And in the morning, you texted me and be like, I'm at GameStop. There's like 10 people in line. I'm not dealing with this. I'm just going home. I'll pick it up at lunch. I'm like, for real, man? And I'm like, all right. And then I was thinking about like, well, if you don't have time, you don't have time. And then it hit me, and I texted you as soon as I thought of it. It was like, dude, you should have stayed. Like, there might have been the amiibo because you were coming back around on it. Because then you started coming back around. I'm like, all right, dude. Well, you know how to get them. And like, it's like, oh, they'll probably have some at the stores and stuff. And then I texted you, and you're like, you picks up the copy. I'm like, oh, did they have any amiibo? You're like, didn't even look, didn't even care. I'm like, what? I don't understand you at all, dude. Lo and behold, like 2 hours. Like, what was it? Was it an hour later?
Like 15 minutes later. I happened to be checking Twitter, and I saw that like Wario 64 had tweeted out that the special edition was available at GameStop and some other retailers, and then the amiibo were available at Amazon. So, I mean, you can finish or I can, but
Yeah.
I ended up ordering the amiibo, and they ended up ordering the special edition from GameStop, and then going back and returning the standard edition that I got from GameStop. So I think my words to you was like, oh, I was just lying to myself because I
Yeah.
couldn't get it.
I have to share from my experience because I find it infinitely amusing the way this processed is that you texted us because me, Mike, and Ed are in a group chat. So he texted us and going like, should I get the special editions available at GameStop online? Should I return my copy and get the special edition? And I'm like, why? You know, you, me, and Mike all sometimes ask just stupid questions just to rile each other up. And I was like, he's not, he can't be serious. And I'm like, no, you do. And I was just on a short fuse from work. And I'm like, no, you didn't like the physical stuff. There's no reason for you to buy it. You have the game, play the game. And you're like, but I really want it. I'm like, oh my God. And then you're like, I also want the amiibo too. And I was just like, bro, have you learned your lesson? And you say, what lesson? And I'm like, that you want to buy all the Metroid things. And then your response was perfect, I guess, because I just ordered it all. And I was like, there you go. Like, from now on, Ed, like, just remember, if a Metroid thing comes out and it's official, just buy it. Stop pretending.
Well, the lesson I learned is that if there is a special edition and I don't get it on pre-order, wait. I didn't know that there were going to be a bunch of them available. I probably would have waited to see. But now, well, that's part of the lesson.
I'm rolling my eyes at Ed. I'm just like, just you know you love it. Just pre-order it. Just do it.
Well, I would have pre-ordered it. I couldn't have. It was all sold out back when I
thought
had
you
So part of the reason I was like, I don't want this is because, well, I can't have it. So I guess I'll decide that I don't want it and feel better about it.
Oh my God, that is the worst attitude. Just be like, I used to be a little bit like that in a bunch of ways. Like, oh, I just make excuses to convince myself I don't want the thing. And now I just accept like, well, I wanted the thing and now I'm just sad. And I'm like, that's fine. And just be real about it. And now I don't recall exactly, but I thought you said you could. But also you were like,
and I did see a couple pictures and videos online of the special edition, and the art book that I thought was gonna be kind of cheap, is actually like really big. It's actually really big and kind of sturdy. So part of it is I got a better look at what was offered in the special edition. I'm like, okay, maybe
they got to do a better job with that stuff, because if you don't see the exact thing, it's hard to tell if it's actually worth your while. Yeah, so I'm with you on that one, and I think that's a disservice that marketing does to the thing. I thought before, because we were talking, like, you didn't want to, you thought the PS5, and it was, like, the pre-order stuff was like a pain in the butt. So, I thought, now the cat is getting inside a bag, like it is, well, it is Ed's fault that there is a bag that is out that the cat can find. But the, yeah, I thought you didn't even try to pre-order it because, like, obviously we knew once the stuff was going up.
No,
like,
I tried. Well,
I don't think I heard,
because
I don't think you told us you tried.
Out.
I think you just went straight to the excuses. You must have tried, like, before we started texting about it, and you must have, like, tried and couldn't, and that must have been why you just went into the conversation going, I don't even want it. It's so dumb. And so that's a piece of the puzzle that I was missing.
I was in the office that day. Remember, like, I watched the E3 presentation at lunch, and I had to go back down to, like, the area of the office that was, like, had poor cell reception. Yeah. So there was no way I was going to be able to, like, watch for the Twitter notifications and jump on it. So I just didn't have the app. I actually was able to get the Shin Megami Tensei 5 special edition, even though I was at the office, because I was eating lunch at my desk up where I had better reception, and I get the notification. I'm like, okay, Amazon order. So I felt so lucky to get that. But so it was kind of a bummer that, like, I didn't get the Dread one, but now I have them both. So I'm happy.
Yep. So, and then I've just been trying to convince Ed to just buy the digital copy and start playing now, because his special edition is being shipped to his parents' house, which is he's gonna be
where I'm gonna drive up there after this, and I'm gonna be there for a week.
So that's the thing. It's not arriving at where he is right now. So he's got to wait, despite being the super fan. Which if he would have just done the thing in the first place, but he tried. So you know what? I apologize for that. I didn't realize that you had tried and that it happened. I thought you didn't even try.
I couldn't. There was no success there just because I was too late. I wasn't fast enough.
No worries. But yeah, so that was our side quest tangent right there of a conversation.
Yeah, that's like a real life side quest. All the steps involved.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the trying to think of what else. So I think it's a nice balance of like the side quests should be noted that they're in the game, and then how to get them should be you can suss that out and you can get clues. I think that's the ideal there. Reiterating what I said a little bit earlier. Yeah, we were talking about the mini games. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about a little bit of puzzle solving. I wanted to call another really cool side quest. And so Resident Evil games have always kind of had little side quests. They're like super small, and it's usually just to find like an extra item or like an item upgrade or something like that, or some more resources, stuff like that. It's rarely ever super required. Oh, it wouldn't be a side quest if it was required. But in Resident Evil 7, they had this cool new type of side quest where you find two pictures. You don't know there's two until you know that there's only two. But there's two pictures so there's two of this type of side quest. You get a picture. It's like a Polaroid. It's like a really kind of crappy Polaroid of a location and says there's an item here. If you go, and it doesn't tell you anything else. So it's up to you to like suss out and look around like, okay, what's the deal here? So if you can figure out where it is, then you go, then the area where you're supposed to look to is now turned into an interactable and you can follow the prompt. And then when you follow the prompt, you find the bonus upgrade. I think that was really cool because it's like a scavenger hunt style thing. And that was actually kind of neat, especially the way Resident Evil games where it's much more tight, smaller spaces. So it's like an Easter egg hunt and you get to kind of check nooks and crannies. The one part that I'm kind of undecided about, and I was mentioning this, is like kind of like sequence breaking, is that I think it is kind of weird that the prompt can't exist. So even if you're looking around, you looked at the exact spot, even on repeat playthroughs, you can't access that secret until you get the photo, as if it's like a thing like, hey, there's no way for you to know. Your character would never check this unless you had a reason to look for it. And I think that I don't know how I feel about that in general. That is a very strange. I just don't know, because like I get having the extra activity, but not being able to sequence break that seems, I don't know. I wish there was a reasonable way to sequence break it in some regard. But what I did want to, we're getting close to the end of the episode here, is I wanted to post another scenario here, Ed, as I was thinking about it, is because as we talked about, side quests are by their nature optional and they're off to the side, but there's rarely, like, even a linear game like Metroid or something like that. You were talking about like quest givers. And we were talking a little bit about like how do they fit into the story pacing, because that can affect that affects people's experience based on whether or not it's throwing off the immersion when the story has the sense of urgency, but there's this thing. What would you feel about, like, because I think about games like Uncharted and The Last of Us, and they, to some extent, they do work in some side quests, but they're much like smaller things, like Metroid style, where like, oh, you kind of know there's like a side objective, and you can choose to like go out of your way a little bit and find a thing, and you'll get like some upgrades or new material or whatever. What do you feel about like with story based, with something like what if it was like woven into the plot that there were natural side quest breaks? Say you're in like a conversation and the plot would go like, hey, so like we know that this is the main objective, but we've got some information that says, well, if we do this, we might find something useful. Now, typically this is like dialogue you would find in a normal side quest, like, but instead of it just being off to the side with NPCs, it's actually woven into the actual like cutscenes, where it'd be like, okay, well, hey, we could go here next, but actually we just got some information that says maybe that if we go here or we do this, do you think we should do that? And it's like asking you as the player, and you could say yes and like take on side quest, or no, and then it's basically like go on to main quest. Do you feel like you would respond better to certain quests if they were actually like they tried to weave them in and make sense as like, hey, we're deliberately like taking a break to do this, but you could totally not, you could totally choose to deny it, and it's like, okay, well that makes sense. We put the offer inside the story, and you just chose not to take that little branch of a path. What do you think of that kind of concept?
Uh, I don't know if it really matters to me how organically they integrate a side quest into the game. Like, I'm kind of okay with like video gamey logic where, well, the end of the world is coming, but yeah, I want to go fishing.
There's infinite time until you do the thing.
Yeah, I'm not one of those people who goes on about what is the term, like ludonarrative dissonance. Have you heard
Yes,
that term?
yes. Hmm.
People always talk about like the gameplay
Oh yeah.
not meshing with the story elements. That doesn't bother me. I mean, it's a video game. Um, it's almost better when games just embrace the gaminess of their side quests and their main quests. Like I said, like where you don't, like in the Xenoblade, where you don't have to go back to the quest giver to get the, you know, automatically you kill 5 of these things and money just appears in your wallet. So I like that better. Like I'm more on the side of things that I'd rather it be fun and easy to play than worry about realism or immersion. Um,
Yeah.
so that really doesn't matter to me too much.
I would think I'd like oh, it's for a different type of game. I don't think like an open world style game, but I would like maybe for like a more of like a straightforward like action adventure. It would be nice for that to be like side for there to be like side quests, and even to some extent like um if you meet certain criteria, you get the side quest, and if you don't meet the criteria, you don't get the side quest. I think I would like it if it to try having side quests like more organically woven into a story, so that way I it would it would just flow better. I think then you could have deliberate pacing, and I think you could write it better. Like that's the thing. Like some of these side quests are treated in ways that are not, they're just throwaway. They're extra, and I think I would like that. I would rather have fewer side quests with each one being meatier and more like impactful or world building. And I'm not even talking about rewards, just the world building and the character growth. I would prefer that, so it could also tie back in, because sometimes I don't know if this bothers you. It sounds like it wouldn't bother you. Is like sometimes you can get some extra information in side quests that feel like you hit something in the main quest. It's like, oh, those two things were related, but the characters don't even react to it because they have to pretend, or it has to work like that you never did that side quest. So I don't know. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever noticed that? And has it had any? Have you got any reaction to it?
Where a side quest kind of introduces information that would affect the main story, but the characters just kind of ignore it.
Yes.
Hmm. I can't think of anything like that. Um, but
Well, other than your example earlier from The Witcher, where one of the NPCs was like, "Wow, you like helping a lot of people." Okay.
oh, from Neo, the world ends with you. Yeah, I guess the
Oh, that
other.
was yeah.
Oh yeah, that's where they acknowledge that, like, hey, there's this grand crisis, and we're just helping someone, you know,
Yeah.
find their lost necklace or something. Um,
Yeah.
uh, Persona 5 also does that, where, every month there's some new crisis that you have to solve, and you have to go into a dungeon to,
Mhm.
stop yourself from, you know getting in trouble. And you can go and do all your side activities, like you can go to class or go hang out with your friends, but if the deadline's still there and you haven't taken care of the main quest, they'll always be like, "Hey, shouldn't we go to the palace and save our butts?" I'll be like, your character can say, "Nah, we got time," and they'll be like, "Okay, I guess you're right," but they're always like messaging you on your phone, like, "Hey, let's go to the palace. I'm a little worried," and you're like, "Nah, it's no big deal. We
Yeah.
can do it later." So,
There's
but
a I
it's
was
kind
gonna
of funny.
I was gonna say games like Witcher 3 and Mass Effect, where the conversation and all that stuff, it's built into the design of the game, where a lot of stuff can loop into each other. Um, I really appreciate when they do that, and I wouldn't mind if the games were more detailed in that regard and less expansive and more detailed. And I would also say shout out from to 12 minutes for this because I didn't play 12 minutes. I watched 12 minutes. I don't remember if I talked about it on the episode about my feelings with that. But I do want to say that I was really impressed by the level of detail in terms of how interacting or doing things in different orders and stuff could have all these different interactions. And it's trial and error. You have to suss it out. But the level of detail that they're able to achieve by just having that smaller space. And I'm pretty sure this is like why Yakuza and Judgment are the way they are, because they commit to a much smaller world and just get more detail oriented so they can do a lot more. I think I prefer that, and I would like to see that more, because while Tales has a great travel system and I've enjoyed the character interactions and things that are there, I find with the side quest dialogue, the intro dialogue and the like exit dialogue, it's oftentimes just overwritten. Whereas I'm like, you could boil this down a few more sentences. Like this didn't need to be like 2 pages. It could have been a couple of exchanges, and it would have felt more natural and more rewarding. But that's like once again, like I'm really enjoying Tales, so overall that's great. But that's the thing is, I think developers are so desperate to pad out games and make the experience worth $60. And I do say like there's something to that to the consumer side where people like want really long experiences for the amount of money they're paying. And that's not to disrespect. I think that there is something there for meat on the bones. But that also we'll get into, we're going to have sort of a follow-up topic, not necessarily the next episode for just for our listeners' information, but we do plan on doing an episode about replay value. And we'll talk about like side quests again a little bit there and just about what reasonably makes sense to consider value for the game, and to what extent, when is it actually added value and when's that just the nature? Because games are naturally replayable. You could replay a game a bunch of different times, even if it's not really designed to be replayed, and you could do different things with it that are your own self. But where does that go into where should we consider that with the actual value? So I'd say that let's end on that question here. Is so, Ed, do you think like oftentimes side quests are like valuable adds to the game and they make it feel worth the price, or do you feel oftentimes you've kind of wasted your time with that? And or where do you think side quests fit in terms of the dollar value for the game?
I think it's nice to have enough side quests to extend the length of a game to, something that you feel like you got your value for. Um, but I know enough about what I like to do in games where if the side quests are something that are tedious, that I still enjoy the main game, then I'm okay just not doing them. And I don't mind short games. Usually for like an RPG, I like it to be a little longer. But even if the game's like 25 to 30 hours, and I like the story and the gameplay, like that's fine with me. Um, I'm playing. I just finished Psychonauts 2, and I'm playing Ratchet Clank Rift Apart, and soon Metroid Dread,
Mm.
and all of those are like 10, 15 hour, 20 hours max games, and um, I don't focus too much on the length of the game, so I usually don't feel like I need it to be padded with side quests. Although I guess part of the reason I do like RPGs is because I do feel like I get a good value out of them. But if something's like a really tightly woven experience and it's high quality throughout, then I'm usually okay with it. And sometimes like the fact that it doesn't have side quests to pad out the length is why it is so well done, because sometimes side quests can, if they're really poorly done and tedious, they can bring down the quality of the game.
Yeah. Bringing up Tales one last time, I've spent over 70 hours and I really don't feel like it's been added at all in a way. Like I've been doing the side quest, but that's because I want to. I'm having so much fun in the game. I enjoy the world, I enjoy the characters, and the game has respected my time in ways like talk to a quest giver. I already have the items. The conversation doesn't even skip a beat. Your character just goes, oh, we have those, and the game just prompts you, are you ready to give those up? Because it still deducts stuff from your inventory when it's like resources. Um,
So you
and
don't even have to like talk to them again after you get the quest. It just is all one exchange.
yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, for like the fetch quest style stuff. Now, a lot of the combat ones aren't, but there have been a couple where it was like, oh, did you, this enemy was kind of tough. And actually, I think some of them were like, it was almost like it was the boss, and I had to fight the boss, and then an NPC was like, hey, we really appreciate if you fought the boss. Oh, we did. We killed the boss. And like, oh, great. So it's almost like an extra bonus, it seems. It's weird. Maybe I'm missing something. But most of the fights I've had to go out and they were I'd have to do an extra fight. But some of them are where if you manage to beat the enemy, a couple of them have been if I've already beaten the enemy or meet the requirement, it'll just keep the exchange going. So that's been great. And then the fast travel system's excellent in it. The loading times, and I'm playing on PC, but if you're playing on like PS5, I imagine it's really quick. And there's plenty of like checkpoints and stuff for you to teleport to. It's really, really accessible. So I've almost padded that game out for myself. Also, the selectable difficulty levels, and I've mentioned like it feels really weirdly. It's all over the place in terms of difficulty, but you can just change the difficulty sliders as much as you want, whenever you want. I think you can even change it mid-combat. I don't know if it affects it in the middle of the fight or not, but I think I can do it. Yeah, I felt like the game's respected my time, and I'm just enjoying getting everything out of that game that I can, and I feel like I've gotten the value, and I agree too. Like, it doesn't need to be that long. I've played games that are half that long and had a great experience. Like the two Last of Us, I'll say, like they might even have been a little too long if you want to say that, but I've enjoyed every moment of them in like 25 hours and even shorter. I'm fine. I don't know how long Metroid's going to take, but I'm already super satisfied with what I've played, and it already feels so big because I'm going to go back through and I'm going to try and grab upgrades as I can, just because that game is a fairly challenging, and some of the stuff it seems like it's meant to be brute forced a little bit, and there's room for brute forcing besides the intended stuff. So
I'm gonna need those extra tanks from those amiibo.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that later. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but yeah, I think side quests can add a lot, and I prefer it if they would treat side quests more as like these expansions of the main game rather than sometimes just busy work. MMORPGs, that's one of the problems with them, is like they're like all side quests, or like their side quests are rarely ever good. And there are exceptions. I've heard Final Fantasy 14, A Realm Reborn, Final Fantasy Online 2, that's what I call it, has probably got some good ones in there, but most of them are probably just junk. And so I wish, like, it'd be nice to see, like I said, a game where the side quests get written in some way, so there's like these natural breaks. It keeps the pacing. I wouldn't say like you're locked off from it if you say no, but like I would love to see an experiment with that. But in general, I would prefer to see fewer side quests and more meat on the bone with them, whether that's character interaction or like mini games or stuff like that, instead of trying to pad out like and have a larger number of quests, like just a handful that are like super good and add a lot to the experience, and they can get referenced in the plot later and make sense and maybe change up some scenes if you actually did them. So yeah, overall side quests can be good. That's where I'm gonna leave it. Side quests can be good. Any last thoughts from you, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, just I hope developers keep trying to make good side quests, because sometimes that can be the best part of the game. Not always, but there's something that can be worthwhile. So I guess, yeah, like you said, side quests can be good, and I like it when they are.
You know what? I thought of one more good question, so let me just throw that out there. I know I've kept saying whatever. That the whole point of this is to let the conversations breathe. So, would you what do you think of, like, and I'm not talking like, well, I guess a story expansion is kind of a side quest, sort of. But what would you think if for some of these games they sold like a side quest pack of DLC? Now some games they just add them in for free. Like Tales actually just recently did some new DLC, both some paid and some unpaid, and their free DLC is like bonus battle missions inside the training grounds area that they have. Would you be interested if they were like gonna sell a pack of extra content that's like these are all side missions, you don't have to do them, but if you replay then there's these new quests to do and you get some extra rewards, or there's new character moments or world building? Would you find that interesting at all, or do you think like that should totally, if they're gonna do that, it should be free?
Would you have to like replay the game to access those?
If you're in the middle of a save file, like that's the other thing we didn't even touch on. Like, I think the side quests, like you should never get locked out of side quests. I think you should always design your game around never locking someone out of side quests unless it's like the final point of no return. You know what I'm saying? Or even
And they
if
should tell you when there's a point of no return.
right, and when you beat the game, it should put you back at like they should create like a new world state that is like you can go back through and clean stuff up. Some games are really good about that, so I'm not saying they don't exist, but I'm saying like more games.
It's very common that games do that these days. That's almost like expected that you're able to go back after the quest and clean up your side quests.
Depending on the game type, because some like they don't do it because they don't think it makes sense. But yeah, so the but yeah, what it would be easily accessible, ideally. So if it's just they're gonna do a pack of side quest DLC, like we're gonna add just a whole bunch of little things to the game, would you be interested in buying that, or do you think that kind of stuff should only be free?
I think I'd rather have just a separate side story than an expansion than a bunch of side quests. But I didn't play the vanilla Persona 5, but I guess Persona 5 Royal or like the I guess also like the Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition, they make significant changes to the game. So kind of like that's kind of like what those are, where
Mhm.
it's a new version of the game and the changes in it are kind of like integrated throughout. So um I guess I can't see myself spending money on DLC just to add a bunch of side quests unless I really read that they were just excellent.
So
Um
so the closest thing to what I'm talking about would have been Witcher 3 Heart of Stone expansion that they did. And that was the first big DLC expansion. And that is basically a giant side quest. And the funny thing is I'd already beaten the main story by the time it came out. So when I played it, I was able to experience and realize that, oh, this was actually supposed to be like part of the thing. And you're supposed to play this before you beat the story because there's ramifications. And now they knew this, so they put it into the game that the game can account for the fact that you've already completed the main quest and changed up some of the dialogue options. But it was originally intended for the way it goes that you can bring it into that you're supposed to play this before the end of the main quest, and it could just be a whole bunch of side quests and stuff because I think it's a slightly unique area, or at least it's just a unique quest chain. So I would say, you know what, as long as it's good, I'm fine with it. If it's meaty and hearty, it's good, but it needs to meet those other criteria where you can hop back in, you can play it, and you don't feel like it's completely out of sequence if you've already beaten the game, because sometimes this DLC comes out super far into the future. That's another thing. I don't remember if we actually talked about it on the one DLC episode of like they should totally just be transparent about what's coming in quests and how they work, or what's coming in DLC and all that. But if we didn't say that before, I'm saying it now. Like season mystery contents of season passes should go away. You should know exactly what you're getting, and they should go into detail about what's going to be. So yeah, quick callback to that. Ed, thank you so much for once again being on the podcast with me. And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. We can't talk to you again later.
Bye.